Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and we are covering Andor Declassified, Episode 10, One Way Out. And with me to talk about this episode and every other episode, my good friend and yours, Alex Kane.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Oh, man. We knew, you and I knew, when we saw Beau Willimon, we looked at his background and we saw the first episode he did. We were like, this arc is going to be amazing. And it has come through.
Yeah. As soon as he got arrested, we were like, prison break. Prison break's going to happen.
And it pretty much happened the way you and I had talked about in that first episode, which is, nice.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we spent a lot of time sort of speculating and unpacking, and you sort of settled on like the solution will come from within and they'll break out using something that they learn from within themselves. And that's exactly what happened.
Again, this episode was directed by Toby Haynes, and I have another Beau Willimon quote just for amazingness, right? So a lot of bad writing focuses on causality. It's this Freudian analytical bullshit. What is the A that led to the B? And more often than not, the reasons are never explained, or they don't have an identifiable point of origin. So he's being very critical in this quote about how a lot of the time when we watch television shows, it feels like we're watching the writer having to connect the dots to things.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay.
I think that we get like the antithesis of this quote in this episode in that it's all vibes.
Yeah.
Right? Although things connect, like, right? Okay, so they're doing the prison break. The apparent prisoner nature of every single character and how trapped they are by the Empire is apparent, or of their old way of doing things, or of their situation is apparent in every single character. They're not point A to point B interconnections between these characters. It's all just like the platonic ideal of being a prisoner within a society.
Mm-hmm.
It's not how these things are interconnected or the spider web. It's more about an exploration of this emotion and how we have multiple versions of the same character on the screen, and we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah
The image that I have in my head is like the way like a good painter will sort of use these very organic like brush strokes to move paint around the canvas. And what this show does so beautifully is it will take like thematic ideas and very sort of abstract stuff, not causality, but yet thematic and emotional truths, the capital T, and sort of like move them around the canvas in ways that you don't expect. And, I think that when people can go back and watch the show sort of as a continuous 12 episodes, like we're going to see even more of that. But there's just like so many things that were in, earlier episodes that just continue to come back and,
it's what I think has been described, and we talked about it last episode, just within the prison, is mirroring. And I think it's actually more like Star Wars echoes. Like there's echoes of the same feelings. There's echoes of the same sort of character motivations or thematic situations. And we have a few of those in this episode, which we will get to, but it's just absolutely amazing television. Like, it's topping a lot of television shows that I regularly tune into. And really, like, this level of television is sort of becoming my bar. And it makes me very disappointed in thinking about a Favreau-run show.
Yeah.
Like, John, like, you need to get better writing. I don't know. The writing is so beautiful on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine that, but with space wizards? Like, the emotionality should be that level.
Yeah. A lot of these guys like Favreau and, Robert Rodriguez, they know how to have fun and they know how to entertain and do things that we appreciate. But it's like the ambition of Andor, you know, in terms of like intelligence and theme is like just through the roof. Like, you know, people are raving about how it's the best thing on TV or
on TV
just about
right
anywhere.
Like,
yeah.
There's this amazing Tony Gilroy quote. I have too many quotes this time, but I really like the in-depth discussions that we're getting out of Tony Gilroy and the rest of the cast and crew. It's rare for a production of Star Wars to not be cards close to the chest, don't want to talk about anything in case somebody takes offense. And Tony is just out on Maine telling people what it is, right? But this was a quote about how closely linked the design of the world was to the writing. And this is so key. So design and writing aren't separate on the show. When we did the writer's room for the first time, we brought in Luke, the production designer. And after he was there for 2 days, you're like, oh my God, how are we going to do this without him? Because you're able to build the world so much more richly if you actually can sort of already picture it. It's not, it's sort of like the reverse of what we get with Jon Favreau shows, which feels like maybe he had the toys on the table. In this, we have the imagination of the characters that can fill the space, but we have the space to put them.
Yeah.
It's sort of so interesting.
It's reminiscent of Rick Carter and The Force Awakens, where like they brought in like Rick Carter and various artists, of which I think the Luke that you're talking about, I think he might have been one at a certain point. But anyway, just the idea of like, what do you call it? Guided something.
Guided imagery. It's a psychological technique.
Yeah, like the castle on the hill with the ice and then the fire down below and like all that stuff that like, you know, really kind of echoes through the whole sequel trilogy because of, you know, they played with images to guide character and theme and like, you know, what do we want to kind of have this whole thing feel like? And
in that way, I feel like their production design became a character on the screen.
In The Force Awakens? Or
no, in Andor.
In Andor. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like Andor is like so consistent.
It's its own character. It has its own symbolic and effort that it puts out. And it's not just a space, which is important. Yeah. And something I think, although the volume can build spaces, I don't like having actual places built feels real, you know? So we start out the episode. Oh, before we get into that. So Alex, how did you feel about this episode?
How did I feel?
Gushing.
I mean, God, like, I mean, it is kind of, you know, on par with, thematically, and the writing is on par with anything in Return of the Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it's kind of incredible. Like, it's sort of hard to believe. Like, how do we even do it justice?
People were asking me if it was Star Wars enough.
I see that recurring a lot.
Yeah.
One of the, like a cartoonist for the New Yorker that I follow on Twitter, you know, he said something like, if this is what you always wanted Star Wars to be, well, then what did you see in Star Wars before that you liked? Because this is nothing like that, being the implication. And I don't know if that's entirely true. I do think that Andor is rooted in history and biography in a sort of a way that maybe Star Wars, you know, is a little bit more like fairy tale and abstract in the past. But like, I think they get back to the idea of, you know, what does it mean to be a hero? What is the purpose of a hero? You know, why does Frodo sail off into the undying lands? That's kind of weird. What's his reasoning for that? You know, like there's, you know, Andor cares about interrogating that question of what does it mean to be a hero and what does that look like? You know, when it's not Luke Skywalker, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, how can you still be a hero when you've had to do bad things to get there?
Yeah.
And that's really, really an important question that many people full on can't, or hey, you've struggled to get there. You've struggled to become a hero. You weren't a hero to begin with, and then you flipped sides. I still think that we're going to get those sorts of stories out of this.
Yep.
There's a lot of interesting developments in this episode, just, straight up past the prison break. Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of good Luthen and Mon Mothma. And, big time.
And zero Cyril with a cereal.
Oh, yeah, he was MIA.
MIA Cyril with his cereal. Yeah. All right, let's dig into it. So we start out with the prison. And we get the voice over kind of saying everybody will be on program. And IMDb calls this the voice of God.
Oh, nice. The prison. Interesting.
The prison,
okay.
Like announcement guy. Isn't that
That's
amazing?
Awesome. Yeah, it is.
It's like, oh, okay. And we have Kino and Andor pulled aside, and they're, because we have the, body leaving with the medic, right? It starts exactly where it ended, and Andor or Cassian and Kino are changing their clothes because they had bad situation happen. And what does Kino what? I don't know how to approach this question because I really want to ask you first, but Kino Loy is not Kino, actually, in the prison. Kino is Cassian. That's really important that, metaphorically, this is who Cassian was before he got into the prison. And as the episode plays out, Kino represents everything that needed to change about Cassian in the experience of being reborn in his catabasis. And so almost every single scene we see Kino with Cassian very close, except for hey, he's going and breaking the water. But as they're running down the hallway, as they re-enter the room, all the way up to the end on the exit, right?
Yeah.
And they are one because Cassian is psychologically working through him becoming a hero himself. And that's the mirror. They literally mirror each other in their walks and stuff like that. And he has a pep talk to Kino. I just as we go through these things, it's really important that I kind of talk about that beforehand. Andy Serkis actually did an interview for The Hollywood Reporter just recently, and he said, so Tony Gilroy and I met, and he explained what he wanted to do with this character, this world, this particular segment of the world. So to place someone at the opposite end of the spectrum as the supreme leader from a very human perspective, someone who's coping with the empire crushing his very soul. I just found the idea to be really exciting and really kind of intoxicating. Right?
That's great.
So at your lowest point, symbolically, in your mythical journey, your catabasis, you're in the underworld, you're not quite ready to be reborn. What do you need to go through? Well, you kind of need to re-envision yourself completely as somebody who is brave enough to step forward and be a leader. You need to rework the way that you are existing in the world. And in the end, the prison break ends up being a mini rebellion, right?
Yeah.
In fact, what people wear is sort of looks like rebel pilots.
Sure, the orange stripes,
the orange and the white, they look like they're on their way to go and fight the Death Star.
I actually had the thought that in this opening scene with Kino and Cassian changing clothes, it's sort of a reversal of when Luke is folding his ceremonial Jedi robes and putting them away all neatly. You get Kino very neatly unfolding and putting them on the reverse, he's very resigned, and it's this uniform means something that it didn't mean an hour ago. And it's very ritual.
There's a weight to it.
Yeah.
Right? Having to put this on is I've been woken up to the world,
Yeah.
and I have now a conscious acknowledgement of what this actually, what this means symbolically. To me, it means I'm already dead.
Yeah.
There is no life for me outside of this prison because I can never escape. You know, and Andor reiterates, and this is the start of the Andor giving pep talks to Kino.
Yeah.
You know, we have to go tomorrow because they are afraid. And he kind of, you know, reiterates his plan. And I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want. And it's very much like the Luthen speech that he gave him, you know, give it all in one go for something real, but in his own terms, right? Like they come back to their cells and Kino is like struck and he's like, no one is getting out. And at that exact moment, we see Cassian look at Melchi and they're like in opposite cells.
Yeah.
It's like, and those are the only two that we truthfully see escape in the end.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, you kind of get that, like in Finn in The Last Jedi, you have sort of like DJ on one shoulder, like saying like inertia, apathy, and then Rose being like, do the right thing and be a hero. And in the prison, it's like Kino is sort of, you know, Cassian's, you know, old inertia, but, you know, so in convincing him, he's sort of carrying on. Yeah. What you were saying with like the idea of Luthen being in his head is like a phrase that, you know, the two ladies use, the two spies, Vel and Clea. So there's like some abstractness to it. There's like that possibility that it's like, you know, Luthen speaking through Cassian to like the old Cassian. But then also it did occur to me that like Nemec's manifesto, like it might come from that in some way too, because of the way that Cassian says that particular phrase to Kino, you know, that sort of rather die than give them what they want, like you were just saying. But
I really hope he actually read it. Like I hope he did. And we get one very small scene with Deirdre explaining that, you know, Anton Krieger's group has taken the bait and taken the ship and the pilot in, and that's like you know, only really to show a shot of our good buddy later on, Lonnie from the ISB, and that he's there.
Yeah.
Remind us who Lonnie is. Yeah.
He's got like the reddish hair and the mustache. He's very like that 1977 Star Wars Imperial guy, you know.
Exactly. Like he's so ginger.
Yeah, he's very cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I love Kino's line, "One way out, play it how you want, but I'm going to assume I'm already dead." Ooh, so good. And then we get kind of like more of the lockdown on the facility, which only sort of galvanizes these rebels within the prison. That you have to be now silent on the sky bridge. You can no longer talk.
Yeah.
Right? You have to like comply. And that's so good.
It's all echoing Luthen's thing about he wants things to get worse because he wants people to get angry. And then we see this where the lockdown is getting worse. And then Kino like raging and shouting, you know, when he finally sort of, you know, when he makes his decision, essentially.
Yes, exactly. We only have one shot of Ferrix, which is Marva has been not taking her medication and the community at large is worried about her. So they've called in a doctor. They've got more people coming in, you know, taking care of her. And Sint is just like actively watching the space. So that's where we will be going next very quickly, I assume. Marva being sick is an impetus for Cassian to go back.
Yeah, walk right into a trap. Yep.
Exactly. And from two perspectives, right? So it's the Luthen trap as well as the ISB trap. Right? Nice
he's going to be getting it from...
It's a nice triangle that they built between literally the rebels and the ISB, and both want to protect Axis, right? Or Luthen.
Right. Yeah.
Then we get the foretold Mon Mothma scene with the financier
Yeah.
Who has shown up, and he looks not as slimy as I was hoping. He looks kind of nice from a smooth perspective. He looks well kempt.
Yeah. I said last episode that his name and the way she described him made me think of like Trump. And like he at least has like the Reagan era blonde comb over. So I felt vindicated by that at least. But he's a lot handsomer than maybe I was assuming. So
and she's absolutely dripping with dislike the entire time. And shout out to this acting on her part. It's amazing. I know we've called out Stellan Skarsgård and of course Andy Serkis, but what we're getting out of Mon Mothma is so subtle and beautiful and hard, right? Like, she is stuck in this situation and not many people will get it, I think. It's so subtle and yet it's beautifully acted. Everybody is acting beautifully in this. Like, there's no weak spots.
I had the thought that definitely Genevieve O'Reilly and even Diego Luna is like better than usual in this episode because he's like, he's got so much to do, so much is at stake that, he's got to convince everybody. And it's phenomenal acting all across the board here.
So Mon Mothma is like, oh, enough with these pleasantries. Let's get down to business. And the financier
what do you want?
is like, everyone says you're very direct, which I have to say, when you say that to a woman, because I've been told this, you might as well have said, oh, you're abrasive. Oh, you're, unpleasant.
Yeah. Like, oh, you're hard to deal with or whatever, exactly. Like that whole sexist thing.
Whereas like men can be very direct and it doesn't come off as, oh my God, they're just being, or whatever. And she is direct because she doesn't want to have to deal with this. And also it's the quickest way, to 2 points sometimes, right? Between 2 points is just being direct. But she's very clear about what she wants. She understands the necessity of it, so is trying to work out the details. And she's like, no fees. And I really love this. Money has very little meaning to me anymore. Like him saying, like, money means nothing. But actually, something else could mean more. And, like, at some point, like, money does sort of stop meaning anything to you. Like, it's really hard for us working plebes out here in society to really have the concept of what it's like to be a billionaire, where really there's nothing you can't buy. Look at that. We're experiencing that in our day-to-day life right now.
Twitter.
Watching it happening. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we can't really fathom that, like, she's talking about 500,000 credits. Like, he doesn't want a certain percentage of that. That would be nothing to him. What he wants is something that money can't buy, which is the opportunity of legitimacy.
Right. Yeah. Like marrying into
a old family. Legitimacy by association.
Yep.
This is so classic. I see it so much in, especially Asian historical dramas. Like, you marry the right woman who will bring your family into different circles. You marry the right man and your family will be elevated by these things. I love how she's like, this is the old way. No favors owed. I have a son, just an introduction, 14-year-old to 13-year-old.
Yeah. Nothing creepy about this. And she's like, what makes you think I respect that tradition? He's just like, like you do.
Like, yeah, I mean, you're married. You did at one point. Yeah. You had to, right? And I love the line where she's like, this conversation is over. And he's like, well, I'll let you think about that. And she's like, no, I won't. And he's like, that's the first lie you've told.
That is a great line.
It was a great line.
The line I love is, a drop of discomfort may be the price of doing business, he tells her, which applies to everything in the entire show. Yeah. Like, this is a show about coming out of your complacency and committing violent acts to incite rebellion. And, so, it's discomfort is the name of the game throughout this show. And I just love that line because
so good. Yeah. And
again,
and honestly, Mon Mothma's been trying to do everything in a comfortable way, relying on her old school friend. And so I got to ask this question, Alex Kane.
Oh, God. Okay.
Will she allow the introduction?
Oh, God. Yeah. See, I think what we know about her so far is that she will allow it with the insistence that it goes no further than the introduction. But she's got a husband who we don't trust all that much, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where I would see that heading, where she's like, okay, like I'm going to play your little stupid game. And my daughter's like smarter than all this crap. I'm smarter than this crap. But, there's two men that she has to contend with here, right? And then the banker friend advisor, they're outnumbered. 3 men to 2 women. So it's good, juicy conflict here.
It's the sort of thing that she knows. Well, we know that this guy, this financier, knows her husband. And so I totally could see him, because of the introduction, making a deal with her husband. And so I actually think that she's going to allow the introduction because she's that desperate and doesn't actually want to break the rules of the empire, right? Like this is So this is really, really key that she hasn't actually figured out that you can't continue to play. She's going to have to, by the end of the series, of course, she leaves and she goes and joins the rebellion full time. She loses something that causes her to no longer care about fancy parties, no longer care about the pretense.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think that she's going to make the mistake of doing the introduction and will regret it.
Yeah. I mean, there's all this talk about, there's been a lot of large mass protests, political protests in recent years. And it comes down to this but keep it peaceful.
Yeah.
And Luthen knows that historically change comes when you throw a Molotov cocktail through a window or you blow up a tank. Unfortunately, historically, you need bloodshed for a certain point when stuff is a certain way, you can't, again, like I said, this is a show rooted in the little guys and history. And so it's it's very Western. It has a very Western point of view in terms of Euro, whatever I'm trying to say. But and so
there's a lot of Marxist thought in this,
and I'm down with it. But
it's incredibly socialist / communist.
Right. Yeah. It's a show that wants you to stop playing nice and because that's the whole thing, right? Is so much of our politics is fragmented and by that whole respectability politics thing of we have to do things the right way. We, the Constitution is a sacred document, hug it out.
Down with for-profit prisons, but Disney is producing this.
Yeah. The devil has a lot of advocates, and this show is saying light a match, blow some shit up, and it's kind of awesome because Last Jedi certainly gestured in these directions, but it was still kind of in the Star Wars box, or maybe not according to some people. It pushed too hard. It really
did question capitalism.
Oh yeah,
a lot, actively, directly, but not. It didn't question the imperialistic aspects of capitalism the way that this show is.
Right.
So we have a brief moment with Luthen and with Clea, who are talking about how there's a mark. It's been a year, I would have thought he would have contacted us before this. And she's like, let me go. What if it's a trap? And he's like, if it's a trap, we've already lost. If they're already aware of who we are, then we're already done for. So it's fine. Might as well, right? And then back to the prison, which is almost entirely until the end, there isn't a cut back from the prison. They kind of kept it all intact to keep that like intensity of everything.
Yeah.
We have the whole setup. Cassian has gone to go and like, saw through his, little pipe to release the water, which we now know, right? That's what's going to happen. Kino has this beautiful, like, as he passes, like the secret message, one way out, up or out, right? Like up or death. Yeah. That's all you got. And literally this is the most Marxist thing. The workers seize the means of production physically, and just like how Luthen says later on in the episode, use the weapons that they are making against them.
Yeah, you see them gathering all these like parts and metal objects and tools, and you're like, what are they doing? They're gonna build something. They're gonna make a bridge out of there. And
it's like
no,
nope. They're just straight up gonna throw them because humans are still squishy and metal is still metal, and even though those humans who are so under, they're not staffed appropriately on each level, if you have an overwhelming amount of people that believe in the same cause as you, this is the entire basis for unionization. This is the entire base for power of the people, crowds being the all people all together, the us, right?
Yeah.
And even if you have primitive weapons or weapons that are not, guns, right? You can still be successful. And it reminded me so much of the fight on Andor.
I knew you were going to say Ewoks. I knew that was coming.
You did?
Yeah, when you were, totally.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like again, like they were looking up at them and they were throwing these things and, you know, yeah. And then using not just like what they had at hand and like overwhelming odds, right? Overwhelming amounts of people all doing the same things, but also smart, right? As much as they could. So the water flows from the bathroom, from the fresher, and they're about to zap everybody, but the water, because of how the floor starts, basically ends up frying the circuits out before it can get to Kino, even though he tried to save everyone and said, up on the table, but he was not able to actually get up.
Yeah. They did a lot of like discussing like the mechanics of how the prison worked. And so I kind of assumed like maybe they were fairly sure that this would happen, where it kind of like fried the electronics, but I don't exactly know.
It was just a chance, I think. Like they didn't for sure know.
Yeah, like it was going to create chaos, which is what they're going for here with like the riot, like the fake fight and stuff. So
exactly, yeah. And the water symbolically is very much like a renewal, a cleansing, a reawakening, and it ends up being protective of the people, right? And so I can't help think, because of where we're at symbolically, the water is like water breaking from a pregnancy, like the signal that the rebirth is about to happen.
Yeah, I literally have in my notes that the some of the imagery in this where they escape like reminds me of that famous painting, like The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. I have that in my notes, like that sort of like V shape of them pouring out of into the water, and just kind of, it's very much a birth image throughout this episode with the
it's so purposeful. Like they know symbolically what they're pulling on, because there's multiple versions of the rebirth symbolism happening, the water itself being what you were born from,
Yep.
And how you must go through the water to be reborn. And so good. We get a couple of really cool shots in this sequence. I'm not going to call them all out, but a couple cool ones that I loved was when one of the men from his table went to the second room and, killed the two guards and said, "One way out," and then brought the elevator down to the room. And it was like, oh, like now these guys are awakened. And the one way out becomes the mantra or the elixir, right? And
right. Yep.
When the water had touched the ground and like it had caused the power to fluctuate, it literally sparks. And it's like the spark of the rebellion.
Absolutely.
And
then like the lights go out and then they come back on, I think, right?
Yeah, the lights go out and then they come back on. And we also get this shot of the water eventually leaking through the floor to 4 because so much water is still flowing because nobody's been able to shut it off. And it ends up like dripping on their heads, kind of like rain, like purifying them or like waking them up. Like it's, there's lots going on there. Kino and Cassian end up getting to the control room on the 8th floor and shutting off the power and the hydro to basically, and I love the guy who's like, but if we shut that off, it'll take months to restart. It's like, oh, good.
Yeah.
That was so funny. And we get Kino's speech. Oh my goodness.
Incredible.
It's incredible. And he has this doubt, like he's kind of like, and that's where like this and like when they start to do their actions and they're working so closely together, they run down the hallway together. This moment when Cassian is looking directly at Kino, like this is where symbolically Kino and Andor are the same, right? He's talking to himself. And in fact, Kino, once he gets his, my name is Kino Loy. I'm the day shift manager on level 5. I'm speaking to you on level 8. And Cassian's like, is that the best you've got? Seriously? Yeah. Like, this is up to you to do. This is your job. Like, you do this all the time. You lead these people. It has to be you.
Yep.
It's up to us. Okay, so it's all of us. I've turned off the power. The floors are cold. Stop the work. Grab what you can, turn their weapons against them, basically. They don't have enough guards, so this is like repeating the Cassian words. They fried 100 men on 2. No one knows what's happening. We are being transferred to other prisons. There's one way out. Oh, it's so good. I clipped notes that. Yeah, and then we get this beautiful shot of everybody like climbing out and escaping, and like the freedom, and then we get to the moment of truth, the exit from the cave, right? The cave, the deep down, the psychological unconscious, where you have to go through this transition, and Andor is not afraid to jump through that, but there is a part of him that is representative of Kino, and metaphorically Kino needs to die. I really hope he figured out how to get a life jacket, but I can't swim.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, the former version of yourself actually can never escape because you have to be completely transformed. And that happening symbolically in this moment is so interesting psychologically. Like, this is resonating on a level that, like, we have to feel sad that Kino is no longer with us because we have to say goodbye to that former version of ourselves that was weaker, that was underfoot. Like, what did Andy Serkis say as we remember? That we have to say goodbye to the person that was crushed to his very soul, because we have to embrace the person that is willing to jump into the unknown and find their path again, and is no longer afraid to stand up to the Empire.
Yeah. It's a beautifully sort of it's one of those moments where the logic of it, like the headiness of it, is ambiguous, like kind of like the end of The Green Knight, where the screenplay and the director insist that one thing happens at the end of The Green Knight, and then the viewer and the editing and the emotional truth of it with a capital T is like, no, I don't agree with the director. I don't agree with what the screenplay is saying. And so you get like, like it's entirely possible. He said something during his speech, like, if you see someone lost, confused, in trouble, hurt, help them.
Yeah.
And so, like, in your head, you're like, well, this is a prison full of Imperial supplies. Maybe there's a life raft or a boat. There's a real possibility someone found him confused and in trouble and helped him. But it's way more poignant and meaningful if we never know and we always believe that he died. Like, that's
or
really
we believe
cool.
he lived, right? Like, it says different things about how we view the world, but the point is, and why Kino we never find out, is because Kino was Cassian all along, like, like metaphorically, right? Like, that's the important thing. And then we get the shot of the prison as Andor is shot out from it, like, carried with everybody, right? He had to leave. He couldn't stay behind and be that person that he was anymore. The momentum of his transformation was carrying him forward, shot out of the prison. And if it's this beautiful, glorious overhead shot of the prison that looks like a flower. And the men swimming out of it look in this V, like you said, like Venus, look like sperm. It's absolutely a rebirth. The seeds blowing from this flower, right? The seeds blowing from this flower of the rebellion.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought they looked like little sperm.
No.
That's comforting. Okay, good.
No, you're absolutely not. But seeds too, right? Like the seeds of the rebellion.
Seeds, yeah.
I mean, it's a flower. I can use that metaphor, or the pollen from the flower that will bring about the next generation of the rebellion. This is going to be, whoever gets out of this will tell the story of it. No one gets out of prison. Oh, well, who defines crime? That's what they need. They need the story of this to live on. And Cassian's not gonna. He didn't even go by his own name. It's gonna be Kino who people remember. Yeah, he will be a hero that people remember. Oh, so good,
so good.
Any final thoughts on the prison?
On the prison. Okay, there's one shot. This is like rewinding a lot, but one thing that they've done really well in this show and in previous episodes, but there's a shot where even like the opening funeral procession of when they're sort of carrying Olaf's body out, like the security guard who's like the middle-aged white guy who's like in all black, he like is looking around, like his gaze is darting every which way, and he's just like terrified of the prisoners. And like they do that a bunch of times, and I just love that performance and that direction of like, reinforcing what Cassian is saying constantly, which is
they're
basically
afraid.
like,
They're hiding in a locked closet, all of them.
Power doesn't panic, I think, is the line. There's like good stuff. Diego's really great in this episode.
He really is, yeah. But in so many ways, he's letting Andy Serkis do the heavy lifting on the emotionality, right? Like he's just there as a very conscious, like consistent, like, hey, we got to go. Because in so many ways, you have to, like, it's all metaphorical, right? Like he's dealing with this area of his subconscious in helping Kino, right? That mirrored himself grow and become the leader that he needs to be. So when he returns to Ferrix, he is that leader because he is the Kino Loy of Ferrix.
Right, yeah.
Right? So it's really important that we see that he has everything he needs. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our last meeting with Luthen, and we have Lonnie walking through the I was like, where are we going? Who is this guy? When we got here, but Lonnie, and he arrives in the elevator, and there's a secret way he's got to action it, and he goes and grabs the headset, and oh god, I have so many thoughts about this. What did you think of this before I get into
like the whole like Luthen scene, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that it's a really it's illustrative of like the thing that I like about Andor, which is I said this early on in the Andor podcast that we've done, and the real heroes of history are not the people who get written about. They are the sort of ordinary people who they take, unimaginable risks to their own well-being because they want to do the right thing and in hopes that they can make the world better. They're not soldiers or not even, spies or philanthropists. Like they're like labor organizers or double agents in this case, people who want to do the right thing. And both Lonnie's situation and Luthen's speech to him, like they're in agreement about that, it's like I burn my life to make a sunrise that I won't ever see. It's hard for people to do that and be that person. I don't think anybody wants that, but it's like history is filled with people who were sort of extraordinary in that kind of invisible way, or else we'd be all living under like basically like the Nazi empire all around the world, if people didn't do that and stand up, so.
Yeah. And like the sacrifices that people had to make so that maybe not even their children, but other people would have children that could live free.
Right.
It's really interesting because he felt like Luthen lies to him, right? Like he lies about Aldhani. And I also think he might lie about Krieger. Like he might be able to find a chess move to actually save Krieger.
Yeah, we haven't seen any of that stuff happen yet, really. It's all off screen. So,
I mean, he's been told that they know about Krieger. So he lied about not being involved with Aldhani. So I think that he might have lied to Lonnie about getting in the way and doing something because he's not going to trust him ever.
Right,
He's not going to fully trust him. He doesn't fully trust anyone, actually.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe Mon Mothma. And even then he tried to lie to her and she was like, BS.
Yeah.
And Lonnie's like, I'm a father now. Congratulations, you're a father now. This is why you're here. Like Luthen calls him straight out and tells him that. And like, I totally empathize with Lonnie's situation. Like he doesn't want to put himself at risk. He doesn't want to put his daughter at risk. He doesn't want to put his wife at risk. And he doesn't see the risk reward, right? Like maybe at a younger age, he identified and said like, things are bad. I have to help. And that's why he was recruited and he was placed in there. And it's been many, many years of him kind of going up through the ranks of the ISB. Mm-hmm. He's been grown in there. Yeah. And this is the compromise that many, many people made. And Luthen calls it out, right? Like he's thought about him a lot and it is hard for him. He totally acknowledges that, but he has no other choice because he has to use the weapons of his enemy.
Yep.
But what do you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance of inner peace. I've made my mind a sunless place. I share my dreams with ghosts. So it's like this language is very much what we traditionally associate with the dark side in Star Wars.
Yeah. The image of the sun going away is like, yeah. Like that's
calm, kindness, kinship, love are all the traditional light side traits, right?
Yeah. I mean, Luthen would make a great like Sith master, like no doubt about that, but he hasn't lost that guiding light because it's all he has, like the mission or whatever.
Yeah. And he's like, I wake up every day because of a manifesto or like a plan I had made, architected 15 years ago when probably the downfall of the Republic, right?
Yeah. To
work our way out of this, knowing that I would never get out of this. I burn my life for a sunrise I'll never see. Whew. I will be stuck in this darkness because of my sins. I have to be the sacrifice for the tomorrow for somebody else. And the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror. Oh God, I love this line. an audience or a life of gratitude. He knows he will never see the other side of the war.
Oh, as far as he won't survive it.
He won't survive it. And even if he survives it, he won't be somebody that is congratulated.
Right, yeah.
Because of what he's done.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's similar to the Saw Gerrera thing where like uprisings and revolutions are ugly, and it's easy for Mon Mothma and like Rogue One to say like Saw Gerrera's methods, we don't approve of that, but they'll gladly
use him,
enjoy the fruits of his labor, essentially. Like,
yeah, I really love that this reference to the mirror.
Yeah,
because he has chosen to essentially do the things that are irredeemable, and he doesn't ever get to come out of the darkness, right? In his opinion.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it's so heartbreaking, truthfully.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like a rare but compelling kind of archetype in Star Wars. Like it's almost like Dooku, if Dooku had like
been good,
known, like
or like not been a Sith Lord.
It's like a similar thing where like he thought his intentions were good, and then he did like a bunch of really horrible stuff. But like, it's like that similar kind of sense of like, I want to make a better world. So how do I do that? I'm gonna like do these unforgivable things. But it like his version of what a better world looks like is, completely perverted by the dark side and stuff. So
yeah. I mean, Luthen wants freedom for everybody. It's definitely clear. And so this is such an interesting way to show, the ends justifying the means in Luthen's perspective. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, he's, it's a great kind of like, it's a very fresh character that hasn't been done a bunch of times. Like a lot of the character arcs in the show, we can kind of recognize them and stuff, but I mean, he's fairly unique and
held in sharp opposition to how Jedi choose to fight.
Right. Yeah.
By Yoda in Rebels. Like, wow. Right. How you fight is actually more important than what you're doing or what ends up.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas the Rebels are like, actually, let's burn this place to the ground and we'll sort through the ashes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the downfall of the Jedi, right? Is like they don't want to get their hands dirty, and then when they finally do, they're like working for a Sith Lord. It's
by
like
accident.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
For sure.
It's compelling. It's great philosophical conversation to be had about like what is right? And back to your point about protests, like there is no polite way to fight injustice.
Right.
There like, really isn't.
Please, Mr. Police Officer, can I have my human rights and like respect as a human being? And the answer is always no, because they have the uniform.
Dear totalitarian regime, please let me out of prison.
Please, Mr. Palpatine.
Yeah, I would like to be out of prison now. No.
Yeah.
Right. And it's compelling and it's beautiful. And I wonder how many people will be inspired by it in the future or just emotionally satisfied by it to have witnessed it on a screen.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see if this ever sparks any sort of civil disobedience.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, like it's just the like if like you're a working class person and the people in power, have billions and billions of dollars to ruin your life with, it's hard to speak up against
it absolutely
Elon Musk or the government or, but whatever.
The lesson that we learned from this episode is it's a whole lot easier if there's more of us than there are of them.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The unity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one of the key things about Star Wars is always that the internal transformation that Cassian experiences within the prison, it inspires and creates an external transformation in the community that he is part of. And so that's all that I want to say. As people who are listening to this podcast hear and understand these like concepts, as you transform, what are you bringing to the outside world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. We end on Melchi and Cassian running away over the sand, 3 moons in the sky, off to somewhere else.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Alex, if any final thoughts on this episode?
Oh, I mean, just to reinforce what you just said, just the image of, you have all these faces and characters that, you can identify, and then they drop off into the water, and it's like, it's like the image of all these droplets becoming, a waterfall, an ocean, and just kind of like, that illusion that we're separate, I think
it's
that's
false.
something.
Yeah. That's very Star Wars as well, right? Everything is
Star Wars. Yeah.
Everything is connected. We are all one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. I'm so happy with this episode.
Incredible.
It really made me happy.
I think it's the series high for me at this point. Yeah.
There's 2 more epides still.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know. I don't think they're going to top it, but I guess they could prove me wrong.
This was actually quite an excellent way to end a series, like a season. So,
right, yeah.
I mean, we still do need Fergus. It is important that he goes home and heals his own community and brings the elixir to his community.
Yeah, right. Yep.
One way out. I hope he says that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which of course is a line from Rogue One, because they're doing that more and more, where they have lines that reflect in Rogue One. The mirroring, the echoing that's happening in this series is exceptional. And thank you everyone for listening. I really, really appreciate all the feedback I've been getting on these episodes. So keep it up, as well as I look forward to being back next week with Alex to talk about episode 11. Alex, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
I made a link tree today, actually. So if you type in like the linktree.com/AlexJKane, you'll find all my various links. Should the Twitter get completely shut down, you have to chase me to Instagram or Tumblr or wherever the hell we end up. That's the way to do it.
I'll include that in the liner notes as a new way to contact Alex.
Sure.
All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is provided by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force. Cheryl, Melody, Night Huntress, In Wild Space, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, and our website, whattheforce.ca. We also have a Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.